What is up, Packers fans, and welcome back to the Daily Draft, brought to you by Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin, just minutes from beautiful Lambeau Field. I am your host and the publisher of Packer Report, Ross Uglem, and very, very excited to be joined today. And I probably should have done this before the show by Carter Karels. How do we pronounce the last name?
Close. It's Karels.
Karels. Okay. Carter Karels from Gig'em 24/7, the Texas A&M site devoted to a lot of the 24/7 sites are football and men's basketball. Do you guys venture out any further than that?
A little bit of baseball.
Okay.
It's number one in the country, so we're a little bit more focused on baseball than usual, for sure.
All right, that's fair. And obviously this is to discuss Green Bay's 45th overall selection, and that is linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. And I always like his and this is going to kind of be ad nauseum for folks listening to this show by this point, but like it was cool for me because I run the North Dakota State site. So I interviewed Christian Watson when he was 18 years old, when he committed to North Dakota State. Then I covered him for 5 years at NDSU. Now he's a 24, 25-year-old man playing for the Green Bay Packers. Transfer portal era makes some of that stuff not as likely, but did you cover Edgerrin's recruitment? How long have you known Edge?
Well, I started covering A&M in February of 23, so I didn't get the chance to cover his recruitment. I did talk to his high school coach probably sometime last season, and we talked a little bit about his recruitment. He was actually committed to Oklahoma for a while before flipping to A&M. So it was kind of one of those deals where A&M got him last second, and thank goodness they did, because what a player he ended up being for him.
Yeah, absolutely. What was his early impact like at A&M? I know, some guys splash as true freshmen. Some guys, especially in the COVID era, are in school 4 years, 5 years, sometimes even 6. How what was kind of his immediate impact on campus at A&M?
Yeah, his first season was that 2020 season where it's kind of like A&M's. I don't know, the Johnny Manziel season and that 2020 season are up there among the best seasons they've had in a long time. So he kind of like joined an elite defense that 2020 year. So he wasn't a starter right away, but he was playing in almost every game. He was a real impactful special teams guy early on. And then 2021, 2022, started playing a little bit more, became a starter in 2022. And then obviously 23 was his epic year that he just had.
So when you talked about 2022, when did it kind of, and maybe it wasn't that year, I don't know, but when did it sort of become, because, linebackers not what it used to be, right? Linebackers used to be the stars. You talk about Oklahoma, you're talking about the Boz, you're talking about, even in my quote unquote, my day, AJ Hawk at Ohio State, right? They used to be kind of the face of the program, and guys that used to get drafted super highly. Now Edgerrin, first linebacker off the board, taken at 45. So when did it kind of become clear that he might be special enough, even at linebacker, to this guy might be a pro, and not only might he be a pro, he might be a highly picked pro?
Yeah, that 2022 season was hard to judge with him because it was so bad in so many ways for A&M. They're had all these expectations. They ended up 5-7, and it ended up being one of the worst run defenses in the entire country. So, you saw flashes with him. You saw all the athleticism and the traits that he shows now. It's not like that just all of a sudden, he just all of a sudden had that in the 23 season. So he had that. It was just kind of a matter of putting it together and then having the teammates around him. But entering last season, he was kind of seen as the only proven linebacker on the roster. It was kind of a position of weakness, was sort of the perception going into last season. And I think people thought that he had a chance to get drafted after this season if he did pretty well, but I don't think anyone expected the year that he had. So I think he just, he showed flashes, he showed the potential early on, but this past season is when he really put it all together. And he had games like he did against Alabama and Auburn where, he's just everywhere. He's all over the field. And, he had moments like that early on, but consistently being a dominant player, he was not like that until this past season.
I want to kind of talk to you about some of the struggles, with A&M and his play, especially like I even go look at Pro Football Focus College, like the grading. Um, some of his best games were like the 3 games at the end of the year. So when you're in a situation where things are certainly not going the way that you want, both in 2022 and 23, obviously Jimbo Fisher would still be the head coach if things had gone the way that they hoped. But just kind of his level of play not really dipping, even though things around him were not maybe going how folks would have hoped.
Yeah, that's kind of the one of the best traits. Maybe the thing everyone always talks about is athleticism, but just the guy's motor and the guy's work ethic, the just relentlessness that he brings. He doesn't really take plays off, doesn't really take games off. No matter what the score is, no matter where the team is, and trust me, this team had a lot of dysfunction over the last couple of years. He was kind of that steady presence, and I think there was a lot of chatter after the 22 season about him potentially leaving A&M. I know, being a Louisiana kid, LSU was certainly a team that was like, oh, is he going to go there, sort of thing. But he ended up sticking around and staying and being a big leader of a team that, didn't have the wins. They went, 7-6 last season, fired their coach, but it didn't deter his play. And so you just think about what that would do for him if he's in the right situation where it is a winning team and a winning culture where, it could even get more out of him. So, yeah, I think you're on something there where even when the team was pretty dysfunctional and there were a lot of highs and lows with a lot of players, but not really with him. There weren't a lot of bad games I can recall recently with him. I mean, he was great every single game last season.
Um, I guess you read some of the stuff that scouts say about him and some of the stuff that comes out that's like anonymous. And I'm not even going to use some of the words that were used, but a lot of it went kind of at his instincts, and a lot of it even went at his intelligence, frankly, which I'm not here to agree with or disagree with or anything like that, but just really going at, and of course there's the ATV incident and stuff like that. What was kind of your thought on that criticism, or even the use of the word like red flag, just sort of your thought on a pre-draft? Because sometimes, and I'm not saying this necessarily happened for Edge, but like sometimes when there is a top sort of consensus prospect at a position, you get to a point in the draft process where it's like, okay, well, now we're bored. How do we tear this guy down? You know what I mean? And I'm just wondering kind of your thoughts on maybe the red flag aspects of Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah, I always think pre-draft processes can get a little silly. With him, though, I mean, there's truth to it for sure. If you're going to point to one weakness, I think when you've got a player who's so athletic, who brings it 110% every play and fires out of a cannon, sometimes you're not going to pick the right gap to go in. Sometimes you're going to over pursue, and maybe you miss on a tackle, or maybe you go a little too far outside, sort of deal. So I think that's definitely the thing with him. It was certainly an issue for him earlier in his career, and I think being 6'3", 230, taking on those blocks and shedding them, when they're those bigger guys, that was certainly an issue early on in his career. But I think that's just something you improve with as you get older. And I'd rather have the guy who is wicked athletic and just needs to sharpen his decision making, rather than the guy who is a great decision maker, but he runs a 5'6" 40, right? So I think it's amazing that, hey, he still has a lot of room for improvement, and he's still producing at the way that he produced his past season. So I think there's truth to it, and I think if there was a reason why he wouldn't pan out initially, if there's a reason why he may not reach his ceiling, it would probably be that. But I also think the fact that he has had so many reps and he was immediately a contributor on special teams, it should be pretty promising to say, hey, like this guy, even if he's not 100% there game one, he can still be impactful as a special teams guy and maybe as a rotational guy. I'm not as familiar with the Packers roster as you are, obviously, but even if things aren't 100% there right away, he can still be a pretty impactful guy on special teams.
Yeah, I mean, where they took him in kind of their roster needs, he's going to start day one somewhere on defense. So if that's kind of at a will position where it's just run and chase, and they have to turn over kind of more of the mic responsibilities to somebody else, I think that's definitely on the table. But you don't spend the 45th overall pick when you have a spot open at linebacker and start somebody else. I don't think, especially when he has the designation of being the first linebacker taken in the draft. I think he would have to embarrass himself a little bit in camp to get knocked down, and those aren't my expectations for Coop at all. I mean, he was graded for me like right where they took him. I think he was my 49th overall guy. They got him at 45. Just couldn't be more kind of on the nose of that's his value. That's what he is. If he's a Pro Bowl level linebacker, those guys aren't going in the first round anymore, but in the middle of the second or early second, that's where they are. Alabama game. That's what everybody talks about when they talk about Edgerrin Cooper. So Pro Football Focus has a stat where a tackle that constitutes a failure by the offense based on down and distance, it's called a stop. He had 10 stops in that game, 6 additional quarterback pressures, a forced fumble. Well, I mean, that's like Georgia, and obviously Michigan's the defending national champs, but like the program is Alabama. So when you show up against them in that way, just your memories from that performance, and was it as epic as everybody kind of speaks about it being?
Yeah, and that was the thing. Was I used the term that he was everywhere. It really felt like there'd be a drive or there'd be a string of 8 plays where even if he's not the guy bringing the guy down, he's right there. He's affecting the play somehow, getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands faster. And I really felt like that was a game that A&M should have won. If you look back on that game, I thought Jimbo Fisher was pretty conservative at the end of the first half, and obviously, they had their quarterback hurt and a whole bunch of problems offensively. They had the blocked field goal, so like it was one of those games where if the offense was even just a little bit better, if the coaching was just a little bit better, we're probably talking about that game even more because it's the game that Edgerrin Cooper puts the team on his back and beats Alabama for the second time in 3 years. So, it was kind of a shame that A&M lost that game because I think, people kind of lose the fact. I mean, obviously, you guys focusing on Edgerrin Cooper, you guys talking about it, but nationally, that was a game that kind of got lost because it became a lot more about, oh, Jimbo, is he going to get fired? Like, what is this going to do for him? When really it should have been about, man, Edgerrin Cooper put the team on his back. So, I can recall he had that. I think at the very end of the game, he just almost sacked Jalen Milroe, and it would have ended that drive. And I think Milroe just got it off in time to complete a pass, I think, on 3rd and long. But I think he had 3 sacks that game. He almost had 4. It almost seemed like he had 5 or 6 just with how everywhere he was. But yeah, it's really impressive for sure.
What can we'll wrap this thing up the way that we wrap all these up. What can Packers fans expect from Edgerrin Cooper as a player?
Yeah. Well, I just think you're going to get a guy with a ton of energy, a ton of motor, right? He's always firing out of the cannon. He's always exploding the ball, exploding through a tackle. It's so fun to watch. I mean, everyone talks about how fun it is to watch the offense, Christian Watson flying down the field. Well, you're going to get that out of Edgerrin Cooper. That guy just flies everywhere as a blitzer or even just against the run, blowing guys up. He'll have some big hits too. And he's a likable dude too. This is a guy who is a country kid, small town kid who loves to hunt. He before every Arkansas game, he would hunt hogs, and after A&M would beat Arkansas, he'd post pictures of the dead hog that he shot the week before. So he's got some sense of humor to him and a country side to him, and I think obviously a beloved player at A&M. I think Packers fans will love him as well.
And that's the last thing, kind of how we want to wrap it up. The town and the team are so synonymous, right? It's the smallest market in all of professional sports in the United States of America. People love these players. Talk about carrying the G, the G that goes on the side of the helmet, and just kind of the person that people in Green Bay are getting, because it seemed to be a theme. A lot of team captains in this draft class, a lot of high character people. What kind of person are Packers fans getting in Edgerrin Cooper?
Yeah, he's a good dude, and he's gone through a lot. I mean, he tragically lost his girlfriend in an accident last November, I want to say, and he's somebody who has been through a lot. We didn't get a chance to talk to him about it, obviously, but just his way of coming up to A&M, what he had to experience there, and the fact that he stayed there in an age where, if you look at that A&M roster, uh, everyone was transferring, right, for a little bit there. And he had that opportunity to go to LSU or even go circle back with OU, and it never happened. He stuck around, and I think that speaks to his character that he did that, and he just kept getting better uh, each season that he was at A&M. So he's a hardworking dude, got that country side to him, and he's a battle tested guy who I think he'll be ready once he's up there, and it's game one for the Packers.
All right. Thank you so much, Carter. Carter Karels from Gig'em 24/7, a part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Carter, thank you so much for your time, man.
You bet. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate it.
All right, folks. I want to thank Carter once again for his time. Want to thank 24/7 Network for making that happen and do everything you're supposed to do here at the Pack a Day podcast YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, click the bell, get the notifications. Follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ross Uglem. Let's make sure you get every single piece of Packers news every day. Have a great rest of your day. Go Pack Go.